Welcome everybody to our latest Prime Target webinar. This time we're going to be talking about social media analytics for international marketers and how Prime Target leverages social media data in our platform. So there's a question. It says, what kind of companies you help internationally, small or large companies? I would defer to Tatiana really to answer that question in whole. Prime Target is for everyone. It's not just for small companies, it's not just for large companies. Anybody can use the platform. And we like to help everybody as well.
Yeah, I think also, Jared, we could add to that it makes it attractive for smaller companies, right? That they can go in there and do it but it also suits large companies as well, especially when they're focused on a certain region or they're focused on a certain product, okay, that they're trying to gather information on. So, as you think of a large global company, sometimes it's going to be too broad for this type of analysis, okay? But as you narrow the focus, okay, which is what we're all trying to do to some extent, a large company would fit in very well. And I've seen large companies use it for their international salespeople or international region development salespeople to watch trends, to watch markets, and to validate what their salespeople are using, for an example. If you go back a slide, maybe one more slide, go back, okay? Yeah, when we run the different types of analysis, the sentiment analysis and your target modeling, things like that, for a person to kind of get an idea of the messaging that's happening in those groups, can you use a tool like even TweetDeck or Hootsuite or something like that, where you would build columns with those hashtags just to kind of see the noise that's out there that people are doing, in a very small prototype manner? Would that make any sense for someone just to get a feel of what type of information is out there?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there are certainly free tools out there, or tools that have a free tier that are, I think they consider themselves to be social media aggregators, where it takes all this information and puts it into one convenient location for you. And that's certainly an option if you are just toying with the idea of social media analysis and how it can affect your business. I think it's a great place to start. As I mentioned, we can still use it. We use the sentiment analysis to help us figure out which countries are viewing, or which markets really are viewing the keywords that we choose more favorably or less favorably, and which case we can use that to make a recommendation about which markets to target for your next global strategy.
We had a couple other questions here.
How can an exporter use social media analytics for their knowledge of their future or current markets? Yeah, so it's all about market monitoring and understanding how people feel about your product or your industry or your company even. So if you are based in the United States, for example, and you have a certain product that you'd like to export and you're looking at potential markets, and maybe you've narrowed it down to 5. The court of public opinion, which is what I like to refer to social media as sometimes, you can see what people are already talking about with your industry. Even if you're not already exporting to that market and you don't have a presence there, you might not get a lot of response about your actual specific company, but you can see how your industry is trending and how people feel about your industry. For your current markets, you might be able to get a little bit more relevant information about how people are publicly speaking about your product specifically or your company specifically. Are people saying negative things about you? Are they saying positive things about you? Or are they not even really mentioning you at all? That's the information that I gained from that. And then in turn, you can adjust your strategy if you'd like to. For example, if you have a very negative sentiment, you can adjust your strategy to try and improve that. If you find that you have low engagement, maybe that's an opportunity for you to say, well, maybe we should invest more in our social media strategy in our current markets or in our future markets.
Is there any rule of, is like Twitter the best? Is Instagram the best? Is Pinterest? What is, there's so many tools out there. What do I monitor? Okay.
Yeah. Sure. That's a really great point. My recommendation and in my experience, it's best to use as much as possible. There's going to be more or less, especially as we get into more conversations globally about data security, there's going to be a change in the field of how that information comes to us. But by and large, I would use a healthy mix of as many social media platforms as you feel are relevant to your product or your industry. If you're using something that's focused on a younger generation, for example, then you might target social media platforms that are relatively new and experiencing really large growth phase. TikTok, for example, is a new social media platform that's really popular with the latest generations. But if you are targeting, a more broad base or perhaps an older generation, then relying on what I would call the blue chip social media companies like Facebook and maybe Instagram and Twitter as well might be more relevant to your market. Do you do reports only based on social media analytics? No, of course not. Social media is a large part of our platform, but it's certainly not the only thing. We also look at global indicators of economic performance. We look at government investment per market in different sectors. We look at the number of startups, for example. We look at currency exchange rates, other measures of market stability. It's certainly not just social media, but it is a large part of our platform.
I would think that certain regions are also very influenced by certain platforms. I think Facebook is used in business outside the United States than what it is in the United States. And is that true? I mean, should I be taking a look at those things by a region also?
Sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right that the particular platform that you are interested in, the usage and the baseline engagement for those platforms is probably going to depend on the market too, and also the industry. I can't really comment whether Facebook is better for old school business or Twitter's better for tech businesses or so on and so forth. I haven't done that research, but there's certainly going to be some biases on each platform, and that kind of goes back to understanding your market or your potential market and what your audience is, and tailoring the information that you would like to receive based on that. So there's a little bit more work on that side to do, and it's something I think that we will actively research as well.
Social media is somewhat of a noisy platform. Okay.
Mhm.
To me, it sounds like analytics is a real bit part of it to kind of reduce the noise a little bit and filter through everything. How do I weight the value of it? I mean, to me, I sit there and look at it, and there's a lot of just offhand comments and a lot of people, a few people driving a message in a big group sometimes. Because there's some major influencers in social media. Is there any tips that maybe can weed me through that noise a little bit?
As a statistician, I focus a lot on sample sizes. And in general, as the number of responses we receive are greater, the noise, it's not that it becomes less important, but the effect it has on your perception of the results lessens a little bit. So if you have a large number of responses that you can analyze, the noise becomes a little bit less of a problem. The other thing is that you can always apply some filtering on the responses that you get. You can limit it to a certain subset of the segment that is more serious about the content that they post, or you can blacklist certain engagement or certain engagements like influencers, so as not to bias, for example. There's certainly a lot of different methods that we can use, and I can't really talk about all of them in the time that we have. But if it's an important resource to have, I'm happy to do some additional research on it, use that as a resource, and circulate that as a resource.
I hope to see you again on our webinars, and we wish you excellent results on international markets, and yes, go global wisely.